Welcome to the hip series video tutorial. In this tutorial, you will learn the fundamentals of all directions of our hip movement. And the hips, it is important to remember, are a central aspect of how our upper body and our lower body function. So they influence the functionality of our knee joints, and they are also very critical in the mechanics of our legs, in things like standing, walking, running, doing yoga, and everything else that we use the legs for. The hips are also the center of how ground forces, are transmitted up from the ground to the spine. And if we have more stiffness in the hips, how the forces of stepping and walking or jumping are transmitted to the spine can have a more dire consequence than if the hips are strong and flexible at the same time. And we want to be able to strive to get a good ratio of the strength to flexibility into our hips. Now, it is important to remember that the spine is really what we're serving here. When we work on the hips, it is because we have to remember the spine is really the nexus of our health. It houses our central nervous system, and if there's any discontinuity in the spine, any lack of strength or flexibility in the spine, it will and does affect our health directly. On that note, everybody knows that we have a high prevalence of low back pain, really all across the world. Not only high prevalence of it, but it's actually increasing all over the world. And a lot of that can be mediated by working with our hips, by rehabilitating our hips. And so what you will need to remember as you go through these videos, and I'll try to mention it as we do the postures and the exercises, but it's good to issue this right at the outset. And this is about the intensity of the stretch that you want to experience while doing these poses. So we'll use a 1 to 10 scale that you might have remembered using with a doctor or as a physical therapist, a chiropractor. We will say 1 is you don't feel anything. It's as easy and comfortable as laying in your bed or sitting in a chair. 10 is you actually feel like it's a medical emergency and you need to stop right away. And so where we want to stay is about that 6 to 7 range, about 60 to 70% of your total tolerance. And there's two ways that we create flexibility, not just in the hips, but anywhere in the body. So the two main categories of creating flexibility is passive and active. The hip series are all predicated on doing more of a passive stretching, and you'll see what that means as we get into it. And the active element is something that we're going to start out with called neural mobilization or nerve glide. And according to a lot of research that's been done on the science of stretching, it's been shown that active stretching is good and just as good, if not even better at times, than passive stretching. But being that we're on our mat and we're actually practicing yoga, it's nice to understand how we behave and how we relate to our body and the action of our muscles when we're in a static position. And maybe to think of it more as a static versus active would be a little bit more clear to you. What you will need for these hip series is 1, a yoga strap. If you don't have a yoga strap, a regular belt from your pants, from your clothing works fine. You can even use a rope, just something about 6 foot in length. And the other thing you might want to consider, other than of course having a yoga mat, is to get a blanket. If you have a yoga blanket, if not, that's fine. You can use a towel to put underneath your head just to create a little bit more of a cushion. Okay, so the first pose that we'll begin with, it's actually a movement, and it's called a neural mobilization, or another name for it is a nerve glide. So this is, as I mentioned in the introduction, more of the active aspect of the science of stretching. And so what you can start with is the standard hook lying position with both feet flat on the floor, knees bent. We're going to start with the right leg. You're going to pick up your right foot off the floor, keeping the knee bent, and then you're going to interlace your fingers. If you can see how I'm holding the back of my leg, you're going to interlace your fingers right behind your thigh. And what you want to make sure is to adjust your hands closer to the knee or closer to the hip. This all depends on your own torso to arm length ratio. Closer to the knee or closer to the hip so that your thigh can stay vertical. And as you exhale, you slowly extend your right heel up and attempt to straighten the leg all the way. Pull your toes back at the top, spread the toes. Inhale, knee bends. Exhale, knee straightens. And it's good to do at least 10 of these. So we'll go for 8 more. Inhale. Exhale. And like I said, if your leg can't, or even in the first several weeks or months, make sure that you still stay within that safety range of the 6 to 7 intensity, and just straighten your knee as far as it will straighten. Knee bends. Exhale. And of course, over time, your leg will adapt and it'll be able to straighten more and more. And of course, if your flexibility increases or is already in the beginning at a point where you can straighten your left leg to the ground, then straighten your left leg. And again, as you exhale, the knee extends. Inhale, the knee bends. As we do the next 4 together, couple your exhale specifically with when you straighten your leg. Because remember, we want to be able to pair up the exhale function of our parasympathetic nervous system with the stretching element of what we're doing with our muscles. And that way you get the best of both worlds. You get your relaxation, your parasympathetic response, as well as the flexibility in your hamstrings. Last one. Inhale, knee bends. As we do these, it's important to match the rate of your breath with the exact rate and pace of your leg movement. And then we'll switch. So you again start with your right foot flat, interlace your fingers behind your left thigh, start with your left knee, just kind of relaxed and flaccid. From the beginning, you can extend your right leg down, or like you did on the previous side, you can start with it bent. That's up to you. If your leg is straight on the right side here, make sure you press the heel into the floor. Keep your fingers interlaced pretty firmly. Take an inhale where you don't move. And exhale, you begin to straighten your knee. And so we'll do a total of 10 here. So we got 9 more, to go. Inhale, knee bends. Exhale, straighten. Inhale. Exhale. And if you're able to breathe slow, that's absolutely fine. Make sure that your movement, your muscular and your skeletal movement, always listens to the pace of your breath movement. So really your respiratory system, your breathing, sets the tone and the pace of everything else that happens in the body. And that's really true for any movement that we do. I'm going to do 3 more. If you keep your eyes closed in these exercises or any yoga poses, period, it allows your brain to not process visual information as much, because our visual brain takes up a lot of energy to power. So if we close our eyes, we'll be allocating all that extra focus to what's happening in our breath and in our muscles and our joints, which is really our target here. One more deep breath in as your knee bends. Make sure that you match the rate of the breath with the rate of your leg movement. Good. And then you release. We'll begin laying on the floor, on your back. You're going to grab your strap, and then you're going to put your strap right over the very center of your heel. And if you can look in the camera, what you see is the strap has to be right at this point. Make sure that it's not in the arch of your foot. It's not even in front of the heel. You want to be able to get it right at the very center of the heel so that you can actually exert the most pressure when you kick up into the strap through your heel, which centers the pressure right into the most functional and congruent part of your knee, as well as your hip. And so you begin with hip flexion. You want to start with your leg straight, and that is the most important part of this exercise. It doesn't mean that your leg has to be vertical. So even if your leg is 1 foot off the floor, all the way down here, as long as your leg is straight, that's what's important. And keep in mind that scale of intensity that I mentioned in the introduction. And so as you straighten your leg, keeping in mind the most important principle that your quadriceps are going to be what keeps the leg straight. So you have to be mindful of how active and engaged your quadriceps are. So you straighten your leg. As you hold onto the strap, you want to actually pull the strap as well as your leg right down into the floor. So there is a downward force going through the whole leg and down through the back of your pelvis. And at the same time, you're going to kick up into the strap, spread your toes, pull your toes back towards your face. And as your flexibility increases and your body adapts, you can go ahead and start to pull the leg closer and closer to your torso. This is going to take some time, maybe months, maybe years, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that your leg stays adequately straight the entire time. And we take 5 to 10 breaths per side here. So you want to relax your face because this pose doesn't require any standing, any balancing, so there's no danger. Closing your eyes, you relax the entire face, relax your throat, and take 5 deep breaths. Since we've already been in the pose for a little bit of time, make sure that you fill up and use your belly as it expands on the inhale. And then when you exhale, make sure that you exhale all the way to the very end of your breath. As you attend to the structure and function of your right leg right now, at the same time, make sure that you dedicate a little bit of attention at least to what's happening on the left leg. And in that case, you still want to pull your toes back towards your face. You want to spread your toes and as well push your heel into the ground. And this action, as if you're kicking the floor the entire time, actually sets your pelvis up for better balance so that you get the most out of what's happening on the right leg. We're going to take one more deep breath out. And then you're going to switch sides. And you can just pass this off to your left heel, lifting the left leg up. Again, make sure that the strap is right at the apex of your heel, the furthest prominence. Spread all of your toes. Pull your toes towards your face. Good. And if you want to, if you can actually, adjust your strap. So the way that I'm holding it is it's in a single loop, and I'm just holding it like handles, which creates a little bit more ease of grip. But if you're just holding it as a single strand kind of strap, or if you're using like a regular belt from your clothing, make sure that you hold close enough to your foot so that your elbows are not too bent. And that way you can include your shoulders as you pull your leg down into the floor. And there's 2 forces. So one is you're pulling your leg straight down into the mat, which you can actually feel the way that your left pelvis and your left glute presses into the floor. But you're also using your arms to progressively start pulling your leg closer to the chest. Make sure that you stay within that safe 6 to 7 range of your intensity. Close your eyes. Relax your jaw, and as we take the next 5 breaths, as you did on the previous side, be very, very explicit about the accuracy of your exhale. The way that we breathe really starts to feed the nervous system with the right kind of support. And if we focus more on our exhales, what we're actually doing is we're priming what is called that vagal tone response. The vagus nerve is the main branch, the biggest branch of your parasympathetic nervous system. And as you practice good exhaling, your exhale etiquette, so to speak, What you do, in fact, is you start to turn on the part of your nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, that helps you relax. And while doing things like this in the body, it's important to create and induce this internal state of relaxation to where the body and your nervous system doesn't feel like it's in conflict. Take one more deep breath out. Good. And then you release. Our second hip position is called hip abduction. That's adduction. And you're going to begin with hip flexion in the previous pose. So you basically pick up where you left off. You still adhere to the intensity 1 to 10 scale and to the standard of keeping your leg absolutely straight. So this demands that the quadriceps stays active. You still have the belt, placed over the center of the heel. You're going to pull your toes back towards your face, spread the toes away from each other. Instead of holding with both hands at the strap, you're going to hold both sides of the strap with just your left hand. Now you're going to grab that like a handle. Again, make sure that your hand is close enough to the foot that doesn't cause your elbow to have too much of a bend in it, and preferably no bend at all. Before you go anywhere else, you take your right hand, make a thumbs up gesture, and then you stick your right thumb right into your hip crease. And basically your hip crease, like it sounds, is where your leg joins into the torso, and there's a nice deep fold or crease. So when you stick your thumb in there, you're going to push down onto your right hip as if you're pushing it towards the left foot. Now, as you do that with your right arm, you keep a decent amount of pressure on that right arm, on the hip, and then you're going to tilt your right leg to the left until the right foot is lined up above the left side of the body. So that could be over the thigh, it could be above the left hip, it could be above the left ribs or shoulder. That doesn't matter. Again, staying within your 1 to 10 tolerance capacity, you just want to make sure that you don't breach that imaginary wall on your left side. And so you keep the leg straight, you push down with the right arm, and we take a 5 to 10 breath minimum here. Close your eyes, and once you have this set and established, at least the beginning of it, and you close your eyes, you again try to recycle your awareness through how your face feels, how your throat feels. And this is something to always reference when you're working with any posture, with any exercise, in meditation, in breathing practice. Our ability to keep our eyes, to keep our forehead relaxed, to keep our throat relaxed, actually begins to soften those boundaries of our flexibility that we're trying to expand, of course. So as we stay here, we're going to take 3 more breaths. Make sure to always accentuate the exhale. And as you hold your leg in this position, make sure that you also apply downward pressure. It's as if you're pulling your entire heel through the shin, through the thigh, right back into the floor. And as you pull down on your own leg this way, you'll actually feel how the back of the right glute or the right side of the pelvis will feel more pressure on the mat. Let's take this last breath out. Make sure your exhale sees itself all the way out. And then you inhale, come back to center, pass off the belt to the left foot. Okay, and then we circulate back through all of the setup. So you're going to hold both sides of the strap in your right hand, extend your right leg down, make sure the quadriceps are engaged. Begin with the first position of hip flexion. Make a thumbs up gesture with your left hand. Stick your thumb in your left hip crease. And then carefully begin to pull your left leg over to the right until, the same thing, your left foot is in line to the right side of the body. So if you were laying up against a wall with your right side, you can see how your left foot would not be able to push past that wall. And so as you pull down on your leg, remember, there's 2 forces to keep in mind. One is how you're kicking your entire leg through the heel into the belt. And the other one is how you're using your right arm, your belted arm, to pull the leg right back down as if you're inserting it right back into the hip and even into the floor. Relax your face, close your eyes. The entire time, keep decent amount of pressure on your left hand as you push your thumb into your hip crease and you push, in this case, the left hip down towards the right foot. There's a lot to keep track of course. And there's no reason to feel concerned on whether you can do 100% of all of the alignment points and cues that are issued in this video. The most important thing to always keep in mind is that you can keep your legs straight and active given this pose, given the specifics of the pose, and that you keep your breath continued and moving the whole time. And we'll take 2 more breaths here. Beautiful. Inhale, come back to center, put your foot down. And then hip position number 4 is going to be external rotation. So you will begin with your feet flat on the mat and you keep the knees bent in the previously mentioned hip hook lying position. Let's start with the left foot. You will place your left ankle right at the top of the right knee. And it's not so much the knee, you're placing it right before the knee on the lower part of your right thigh actually. Make sure that your outer edge of the left foot is just on the border of your right thigh, the outer lateral right border of the right thigh. Engage your toes, pull the toes back on the left foot towards the knee, and then you're going to heel and toe walk your right foot, your bottom foot to the left. Okay, you're going to heel and toe walk it to the left about the distance of your shin length. Once you have your foot stop in that position, you're going to slowly begin to lower the right knee to the floor, and at the same time begin to lower your left knee towards that right ankle. You're going to use your hand, place the heel of your palm right at the wrist, at the root of your left thigh, and then instead of pushing down, push forward. So it's as if you're pushing your leg away from your body. And thereby you create a little bit more what is called joint distraction or traction, decompression at the hip joint. So as you push your leg in this manner, kind of away from the body, you can encourage a little bit of a downward push. Just make sure that you're not overbearing in the amount of strength that you're applying to your leg doing this. Keep in mind that sometimes whatever might be happening in your knees, this might not be comfortable for your knees, in which case you can explore a couple of different solutions with your feet. So you can first try to pull the toes back on the knees, on the leg where the knee is feeling a little bit of trouble. You pull the toes back towards the knee. I'm doing it with both feet in this case so you can see. And then you add another movement called ankle eversion where you press the outer edges of your feet towards the ground or away from the front of the body. And in the case here of the left foot, I'm attempting to wrap the outer edge of the left foot around the right thigh. And in the case of my right foot, which is on the floor, I'm really just pressing the outer edge into the mat. And you'll notice that this kind of initiates a different muscular structure in your legs. And playing with that and going back and forth between either maybe rotating the sole of your feet, the sole of your foot, or both feet up towards the ceiling or towards the floor, going between those two, you will slowly find where your knee feels the most balance. And so we're going to take another 3 to 4 breaths. Make sure that again, once you get steady and comfortable enough, your eyes are closed, always staying true to that intensity scale. As tempted as we might be at any given time to desire a little bit more flexibility and to really push for it, it's better to take the longer road of sustainability and health and getting these flexibility issues resolved in a manner that's more congruent with how biological systems work, which is usually a lot slower than our desire systems, let's say. Good. And after this last exhale, first you can just slide your left foot off the knee and then heel and toe your right foot back to place so that you don't have to agitate your hip muscles and pick up the whole weight of the leg. You just heel and toe it right back. Okay, and then we'll go to the other side. So you're going to start with your right foot on top of the left thigh, at the bottom aspect of the left thigh. Engage the right toes, pull them back, evert your foot, and then heel and toe the left foot to the right, like I said before, about the distance of how long your shin is. And as you start to reach the left knee towards the floor, your right knee will slowly begin to descend towards the right foot. And in this time, you place the heel of your right palm against the root of your thigh and just begin to push away from you. And it's okay if how you feel your pelvis and your hips on the ground feels a little bit askew and unlevel. Don't worry about that. Just really try to connect and feel into what's happening in your hips. And sometimes if your feet slip off the knees, you just have to really lock that eversion action of your foot around the thigh. And so in this case, by the time you get your knees this close to the floor, what eversion means is you're attempting to turn the soles of your feet down. And for most of us, even for those that have trouble with knees, this will be a really good remedy. And let's take 3 more lovely breaths. And as you close your eyes, one good focus is you can actually feel into your hips and try to feel into them a little bit more objectively. So you're not personalizing the intensity of what's happening for you right now. One more deep breath out. And then you're going to release, slip the right foot off the knee, heel and toe your left foot back to center. Hip position number 5 is going to be internal rotation. So you're going to begin with the right foot. You're going to heel and toe your right foot to the right. Again, as the previous pose, about the distance of the length of your shin. And you could just approximate it, and you'll see in a second what we're looking for. You lift the toes on the right foot, and you begin to slowly lower your right knee down towards the floor. Don't worry about it. It might not get to the floor. Most likely it will not. It's very few people that have that kind of joint structure and flexibility that will allow them to do it. That is not the point. You take your left foot, pick it up off the floor, and then you gently place your left foot at the lateral bottom aspect of your right thigh. Engage the toes on the left foot, pull the toes back, is on that external rotation position of the previous pose. You're going to just keep the foot everted, just so the knees stay in balance. And more than anything, what you want to try to do with your left leg, and you're going to do this with your right arm here as well, is you're pushing your thigh more away from you. The whole purpose, or at least one of the main purposes, of these hip series is to create more decompression at the hip joint. What's happened over time is with dysfunctional mechanics of walking and standing or playing sports, the hip muscles have become so constricted that they actually pull the head of the femur into the hip socket way too tight, and they've kind of locked it in there, which doesn't allow for the fluid movement that the hip is meant to articulate with. And so why we press down on the right thigh this way, why we even use the left foot to imagine drawing the leg away from the body, is to help inspire some of that distance, some of that decompression, or some of that joint traction. You're not going to feel your pelvis, the back of the pelvis, evenly flattened on the floor. Try not to manage that and flatten it. Just take care of allowing your right thigh to internally rotate. And as we take the next 5 breaths, close your eyes. With each exhale, see if you can add just a little bit more pressure, not much. Remember, never push past that 6 to 7 intensity scale, but just try to put a little bit more pressure once you get comfortable. So you're looking for increments of flexibility increase only when you're exhaling. And as mentioned before, the exhales help to induce our parasympathetic nervous system response, which in itself creates this nice, beautiful cycle where the body becomes more flexible, and as it becomes more flexible, we actually get a better, stronger parasympathetic response, and it just keeps working that way, and things get more and more balanced, more and more quiet and sound and healthy like we want it. One more deep breath out. And then first, to come out, you take your left foot off the knee. Instead of picking up the weight of your right leg, just simply heel and toe your right foot back to center, and then you will stand up pretty much on its own. Okay, then we go to the left leg. You're going to heel and toe your left foot to the left. Slowly lower the knee down to the ground, and then you're going to pick up your right foot and place it onto your left knee. And what you really want to look for is to have a straight line from the left side of the torso all the way down through the leg. So if you want, you can always pick up your head, look at the angle that your thigh makes relative to the torso, and adjust it if it's not straight. Engage both feet, pull the toes back, and then again, just allow the weight of the right leg to encourage the descent here of the left knee and thigh. Place your left hand against the front upper section of your thigh and just gently start to push away from the body. Close your eyes and notice which side has a little bit more comfort. Which side for you has more flexibility in this position? And this is what we do. Every single posture by posture that we go through, take mental notes, and even if you want, have a little notepad with you and just take notes on what side has more flexibility or more restriction with each of the given poses. Most of the injuries that we have, or just dysfunction that we have in the body, is caused by an asymmetry. It's caused by a difference of how much flexibility we have on the left versus the right, or the front of the body versus the back of the body. And let's finish up here with our last breath out. Keep your tongue nice and loose. Keep your lips soft, jaw relaxed. And to come out, take your right foot off the left knee. Heel and toe your left foot back to center.